So there's a few misconceptions about reconciliation. A lot of people mistakenly think that rebuilding attraction is all based on what you say, saying something smart, stylish, funny, bragging, but that's not true. Reconciliation happens because of who you become. Desperation, apologies won't bring your partner back, but a powerful transformation will. Because the more that you chase, the further away they pull. Ultimately, because you're putting the effort of growth into the wrong parts. And I get it. It can feel really frustrating, painful, humiliating even, to know that you've lost your ex's trust or connection. And it's even worse when your efforts to fix it just pushes them away. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how to stop being overlooked, stop being ignored, and to start becoming the kind of person your ex wants back in their life. So many people try to fix a broken relationship the wrong way. They make so many mistakes that only reinforce the distance between you and your ex. So I want to break down where most people go wrong. A lot of people think that words will do all the work. Apologies, explanation, long messages. They believe that if they just say the right thing, everything's going to be fine. You're going to fix it by talking your way out of it. But the truth is, it only makes it worse. Or sometimes people rely on emotions instead of changing. So guys can show sadness, regret, or bomb, thinking that this is going to be enough to fix the relationship. But this isn't going to work either. Or worst of all, is when you try and rush the process. This is wanting reconciliation now instead of respecting the time and effort needed for real change. This impatience comes out in everything that you do. And ultimately, your partner feels this when you're chasing them, trying to speed up this reconciliation process. Sometimes guys try to prove that they've changed instead of just changing. You know, if you have to convince someone that you've changed, then you're already losing. They should see it without you having to say a word. Ultimately, what happens is that all of these things make reconciliation about you, not your partner. So if your partner has broken up with you and you're trying to reconcile with them by doing all of these things, it shows them that you're only thinking about what you can get from this relationship. Because ultimately, it becomes a mission to satisfy your own emotions instead of adding true value to your partner's life. And ultimately, if you don't stop doing these things, you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay in the cycle of chasing, convincing, hoping, whilst your partner just moves on because you're not providing the value that they're looking for within a relationship. But it doesn't have to be like that. If you do the right things, if you do the effective things, and if you grow in the right ways, then your partner can come back willingly, because the best way to earn reconciliation is to make it undeniable. So if you want to be someone worth reconciling with, you can't just sit there hoping that your partner is going to change their mind. You have to become undeniable. That means stepping up, taking ownership, and leading by example. So the first step is always own your part fully and completely. So nobody wants to reconcile with someone who still plays the victim. If you step up, you take responsibility, and you own your part in the breakup, that is the absolute bare minimum that you can do in the reconciliation process. This means dropping the defense. Stop justifying, stop blaming, stop minimizing. If you screwed up, you need to own it. But owning it is also acknowledging the impact. So if your partner wants to talk to you about it, wants to talk about the pain, the hurt, then this is something that you need to acknowledge, not get defensive about. It's not just about what you did, it's about how it affected your partner. So in owning your part, it's really important to make sure that you're committing to better, not just with words, but with action. Showing your partner with action that you're different. And this action, to be clear, isn't buying gifts. It's not saying a lot of nice words. This is showing up in the right ways, in the ways that mean something, rather than something showy, flashy that anyone can do. Next, now that you've owned your part, start cultivating your growth mode. So if your partner doesn't feel drawn to you, why would they come back? It's important to start getting into constant growth mode, not just growth to try to win your partner back, but growth for growth's sake. This is really, really important. You know, a lot of people get into this habit to try to win their ex back, and they only go into growth mode in order to get something. So they decide to grow, but they're constantly clock watching, right? They're looking at their watch thinking, how long do I have to do this for? How long do I have to grow for in order to get my ex back? Because once they come back, I kind of want to stop. The problem with this is that your ex has a built-in bullshit meter. They can tell that if you're just growing for the sake of getting them back and you're waiting to stop, they'll be able to smell it a mile off. So if you don't start shifting your mindset away from this idea of growing just to get something and instead growing for the sake of growing, then ultimately your partner is going to see this coming from a mile away. And this is going to repel them even more. If you're only changing the way you speak, if you're only dressing differently, if you're only going to the gym more in order to win them back, no matter how much you grow, they're going to feel it. So it's really crucial to make sure that you are learning these skills and growing for the sake of growing, whether your partner comes back or not. This all starts with mastering your emotions. No one wants to reconcile with an emotional hurricane. So making sure you're learning the skills and mastering them in order to make sure that you're showing up for yourself and for your future partner consistently. Next, it's absolutely imperative to stop trying to convince and start demonstrating. So talking about change is cheap. In fact, it's likely that you've done this many, many times before, and your partner has heard a lot of talk about change, a lot of talk about what you're planning on doing, what you're currently doing in order to try to win her back. But if you're not living and breathing it, like we mentioned in the last step, then you can talk a lot, but it's not going to be shown. So this is making sure that you're living the change daily. If you feel the urge to talk about how much more patient you are, make sure that you're actually living it. If you want to talk about how much more patient you are, prove it instead. Don't talk about it. If you're more honest, make sure that you're embodying it. Make sure that you're being transparent about your intentions, about your flaws. Make sure that you're letting your actions speak louder than your need for validation. So don't start fishing for approval. Don't start talking about how much you've changed, waiting for your partner to pat you on the back and say, good job. If you are truly changing, then this will show in everything that you do. And if it's not showing, then maybe your standards of growth aren't particularly very high. And this may sound a little bit harsh, but a lot of people think that by changing one or two sentences in their communication or reducing arguments down from 5 a week to 1 a week is growth. But ultimately, if you're changing, but still changing to a very low standard, then this is going to come out in everything that you do. And working with the thousands of members that I've worked with, it's never about what you do. It's about how you do it. So a lot of people can open up communication with their exes, but they haven't made any internal shifts. So they crumble, they get angry, they start trying to persuade their partner and talk them into coming back to them. So it's always about how you do it. And this is really crucial. You know, in all of my YouTube videos, I talk a lot about the what, and I try to dig into the how. But ultimately, the what is very easy. You can do it once, twice. Maybe you can even fake it for a few months. But that's why the how is so important. Because if you're not shifting internally, if you're not communicating to a very high level, and your consistency is very, very poor, it doesn't really matter that you're having conversations because everything is to a very low standard. And this is what all of my successful members have found, is that in raising their standards to a much, much higher level and being consistent with the effort of raising that standard, then it changes the what, because the how is so much more crucial and it changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. And a lot of my members have repaired their relationships because they chose to raise their standards to a very high level. And as a result of that, their partners willingly came back to them without some smooth talk or persuasion. They chose to come back because they saw that the members were doing things to a very, very different level. So it's a very, very different ball game to play. And if you do want to join the members and I, then join my Relationship Bootcamp, where you'll learn the same fundamentals that all of my members start with in order to start repairing their relationships from the ground up. I'll drop the link in the description if you want to grab your spot. So it's important to create undeniable proof. A history of consistent action makes your words a lot more credible. Next, become an opportunity, not a burden. So would reconciling with you add value to your partner's life? Or would it just solve a problem for you? Make sure that you're becoming someone who brings solutions, not drama. So if you were the storm before, be the calm now. Make your partner's life better, not harder. For example, if you were needy, if you're constantly asking for validation, rather than talking about everything that you're going to change, start to show up differently. Ask yourself, if they let you back in their life, would it improve their world? Would it improve their life? So start building something that's worth sharing. New skills, new mindset, new outlook. Make reconciling with you exciting. And again, this is going to come across in your actions rather than your words. Next, as I mentioned before, cut the neediness. So making sure that you're embodying true strength, because ultimately needy energy repels. Making sure that you're self-sufficient. This is what adds to attraction. So if you're coming from a place of want, that's great. But if you're coming from a place of need, then that is going to push them away. Desperation is really unattractive. So making sure that you're doing everything you can to be whole on your own. If you constantly need to push your partner to reconcile with you, then ultimately it's going to backfire. But if you are whole yourself and you're coming from a place of you want your partner back, but you don't need them back, then naturally this will allow you to respect any need for space that they have at the moment without having to chase them, without having to get attention, without having to have reassurance that everything's going to be okay. When you're coming from a place of want, this combined with your growth can create a lot of attraction, because ultimately this is showing that you can thrive with or without them. And ironically, this makes a partner want to come back. But most of all, make sure that you're mastering the art of repairing trust. So broken trust is a very, very slow rebuild. This is not a one-time fix. There's a lot of people out there that are going to tell you that you can fix your relationship in 30 days or 2 months or whatever it is. But ultimately, it may draw them back in the short term, but it's not going to fix things long term. So making sure that you're doing what you say you'll do all the time. Your word is always going to be your currency. So making sure that you're spending it in the right way. Making sure that you're clear with not only your intentions, but also your awareness of your flaws as well. Being able to show that you acknowledge your flaws and through your actions are actively working on them is going to be really crucial for repairing the relationship. And then over time, allowing them the autonomy to make their own decision about whether you're consistently and your actions are matching your words at the same time. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day. It's earned with your reputation. But most of all, make sure that you are changing for yourself. I've done a much deeper dive video on this, which I'll link to on the screen, but making sure that the changes that you're making are because you need to make them, not just doing it to please your partner. This is a trap that a lot of people can fall into, is that when they go through a breakup, they start to make these changes, but they start to score keep. They start to tally up all the changes that they're making in the back of their mind. And over time, this can build up in a lot of different ways and come out in the way that you're speaking. And ultimately, it can destroy the reconciliation process before it's even begun. So I'll leave you with that deep dive video, and I will see you over there.